So, two of the industry's most interesting rule breakers, people I've known and liked for a long time, and I look forward now to presenting them to you, Marc Benioff, Michael Dell. Gentlemen. Michael, good to see you.
Thanks, Peter. Good to see you.
Okay, welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here at Cloudforce, London. We're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Got some big English chairs here, evidently,
Yeah,
for you.
pretty nice.
Fantastic. Well, we have a lot of people here in the audience, and we have more watching over the net. And what I'd like to do is I'd like just to take the next 45 minutes and talk about you and kind of how you see the industry and where you think things are going. I guess the first thing is what's on my mind, what's on everybody's mind. 2 weeks ago, HP basically said, that yes, they bought Compaq, yes, they've been in the computer business for a long time, but HP is leaving the PC industry and leaving it all to you. So how do you feel about that?
Sometimes the ball just bounces in your direction, and as I was thinking about this, I sort of reflected on what are the really great things that ever happened to us that we had no control over, and certainly this would have to be one of the very best ones. So, I would tell you our strategy is very different than theirs.
You're staying in the PC industry, I imagine.
Yes, we are. And we certainly do much more than that. Our business has broadened out quite a bit over the last 5 or 10 years. I'm sure we'll get to.
You're in software now. You're in networks with Force 10. You're in storage. You have
data centers, solutions.
Compellent. You have a lot happening now.
But we believe there's still a big role for the device. Right. If you think about the end client device, there's a lot of discussion about smartphones and tablets. Mm-hmm. Let's sort of look at that space for a second. You have an installed base of 1.5 billion PCs. Gartner says there will be 2 billion PCs by 2014. And certainly, at the front end of any productivity-driven environment, you see a lot of these PCs and client devices. What we also find is that as people get smartphones and tablets, they end up with 2 devices and 3 devices, not a replacement. So it's pretty interesting. There's lots of new devices, but we think the role of the client device absolutely continues. We also know, in terms of the supply chain, that there are very tight integrations in.
That's a major issue, isn't it? I mean, isn't that going to dramatically impact HP by not having that leverage?
Many have forecasted that in the last week or so, based on their announcement. But if you kind of think about how this works, well, first of all, a lot of customers like to buy their servers and their clients from the same company, and so that itself is an opportunity. But if you look inside the devices themselves, start with the servers and the storage, the data center. About 5% of the disk drives in the world sit inside data centers, whether they're your cloud data centers or other data centers. 5% of the disk drives in the world. And 95% are in PCs, and there's just some in cars and set-top boxes, but mostly PCs. The same is true for microprocessors and for memory chips and just about every other component as well. So if you were a big provider of PCs and you kind of sold that off, you would go from one of the largest buyers in the world of those components to not being, in the top 5 or perhaps even lower. So that effectively raises the cost of all of those products to customers, and that's generally not a good thing. We also know, we've built almost a $20 billion data center business, and we built that on the foundation of the client business. So as we go to our customers, we kind of provide this complete solution. It's the client, the server, the storage, the networking, the solution. And our evolution as a company has really been about understanding what problem the customer's trying to solve. And that's sort of evolved us from the product to the solution. But the the product is still important. So if you think about it in sort of big animal pictures, you know, there's sort of three parts to the industry. There's the hardware, there's the software, and there's the services. And maybe you're sort of doing a bit of software and a bit of services, and you're kind of, you know, interesting new hybrid.
We have our own animal pictures.
Yeah,
so.
you got cartoon characters, and you know, all those are fun guys over there, so doing great stuff. So, but you know, software is great, but you have to run it on something. That's called hardware, and services and
Can you
solutions
just
are
stop
great.
on that? I would need to write that down, actually. So okay.
And you know, solutions are great, but you need software and hardware to make them go. So we absolutely believe that value continues to shift in the industry to software and to services and solutions. That's why we've been making all the changes and evolution we have been. We don't think the hardware goes away.
It evolves.
It evolves, and you know, if I think about today, you know, we're the #1 company in the world providing healthcare IT solutions. And what that means is that we provide to thousands of hospitals health information systems and evidence-based medicine systems and electronic medical records and claims adjudication systems and affiliated physician systems. And ultimately what we do is we help them create better outcomes for the patient, because that's what they want. You know, if we go to that hospital and say, we have shiny boxes, you say, well, that's not really interesting. You know, I don't really need so many shiny boxes. Maybe they're interesting or cool, but you know, how can you actually help my patients? And so that's the approach we've taken in our business, is to really understand the ultimate problem the customer's trying to solve. And as we've done that, that's taken us much, much further into this direction of solutions and services, and that's taken us down the acquisition route, and we've been acquiring lots of new capability to go make that happen.
Well, you've seen a lot of, we're talking about evolution, you've seen a lot of evolution. You started the company with, you know, when you're 19 years old, next year you'll be 47 years old. I know that because in 2 weeks I'm going to be 47 years old, and I think that you're about 3 or 6 months younger than I am. And, you know, when you look at that huge continuum.
Does that make you my big brother?
I hope not. When you look at that huge continuum of technology, right? I don't want to get in the way with your other brothers who are all great.
Yeah.
When you look at that huge continuum of technology from when you started making, you know, initially PCs, initially it was in your dorm room at college. You look at today, you know, the dramatic shift in the PC of one of your new laptops up there, which is your new 14-inch. It's not aluminum.
XPS 14Z, Mag Alloy.
Right. Now I bet. I don't know. Can you tell me what the processor that's in there and what the speed is and how much memory is in there?
Sure, it's a Core i7 processor. Has 8 gigabytes of DRAM. It's got an optical drive. You know, it's got pretty much everything you need.
Camera.
Of course.
Yeah.
High definition.
So since you were
HD
19, right, you have had that same level of passion around hardware. You've had that same level of passion around building a great computer and having that customer relationship. And, you know, you wrote an incredible book, you know, on buying direct, you know, from Dell. And, you know, first of all, where did the passion around the technology and the hardware come from? You know, you were in your college, you know, dorm room. It was, you know, you're 19. You ended up dropping out of college like so many other great entrepreneurs. Can you give us some insight? What happened at that point? When did you realize that something amazing was going to happen?
You know, when I was, little kid, my dad had this Victor adding machine. You know, you'd press the buttons and it'd make all this noise. The numbers would be flying. And I thought, that's really cool, you know. And then the calculator sort of came out in the early 70s, and I was pretty fascinated by these machines that could calculate. And then, you know, in the kind of the late 70s, the microprocessor was coming out. It was Byte Magazine and Radio Shack, and I'm studying all this stuff. And I was fortunate to be in a math class where my teacher had a teletype terminal, and you could get on the cloud and do your apps. It was great. You could type them in; they'd go off. It was early version of cloud computing.
Yeah, that's crazy. I actually had that same experience. It's kind of funny. We never talked about that.
And so I sort of got infatuated with this idea that wow, you could write these programs, the answers would come back, and this was just incredible.
In high school.
Actually, it was junior high, seventh grade. Seventh grade. And
what was that teletype machine connected to?
It was connected to some big machine, downtown Houston. Don't even know what it was. And so we were learning basic programming language, and then I would ride my bicycle home and stop at the Radio Shack and learn all about the that. And then
TRS-80 Model 1,
TRS 80, and then the Apple II came out, and I bought one of those and took it apart and learned how to program in assembly language and learned everything I could about hardware and what excited me was this idea
6502 assembler.
6502,
on the Apple II.
Right. What excited me was kind of seeing the power of these machines being affordable by individuals, by small businesses, and the democratizing effect that had on business before businesses, individuals couldn't afford them. And then when IBM jumped into the PC, it sort of got pretty serious because they had this incredible business orientation, and so I was sort of I was 16 years old at the dawn of the PC, kind of watching that whole thing, getting really excited by it. And
we're at MS-DOS.
It was DOS, all right. And I saw.
Well, it was not called MS-DOS at that point. Was it just DOS or PC-DOS?
This was before the compatibles. You had compact computer, and I remember in high school. I was a senior in high school, and my lab mate in chemistry said, yeah, my dad works at Texas Instruments, and he's going to leave, and he's going to this startup called Compaq, and they're going to make IBM compatibles, and I think that sounds really interesting. So I was taking apart these machines, and I'd take apart the IBM PC, and I didn't see anything made by IBM. And they'd sell this machine for like $2,000 or $3,000, and you look at the parts inside, and they cost like $500. And I started playing around and upgrading. And so, my parents, like most kids in high school, they said, you should go to college. Okay, go to college. So, go to college, and then I had a lot of time on my hands, right, to do whatever I wanted to do. Sorry, parents. It's just kind of I'm experiencing this too. My oldest is now off to college, but what I saw was just an incredible opportunity, and we started actually by making upgrade kits for computers, and it was just amazing to think about how these devices could
you had that insight
solve
at that
all
point.
These problems and the company grew 80% a year for 8 years, and then 60% a year for the next 6 years. And if you take any number...
But most 19-year-olds don't, leave their dorm room, go to the airport, get on a plane to Taiwan, and look for parts. Isn't that what you did?
My first trip to Asia, I was 20 years old, and I spent 3 weeks there. And I went to Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong. And that was a real eye-opener. It was 1985. And, but the company had already started. And, started building relationships for the components and the ingredients. And, we started expanding all over the world. Company grew very fast. Anyway, if you take those compounded rates in the first 14 years, you start with almost any amount, you end up with tens of billions of dollars after a decade and a half. And And so the company grew very fast, and we expanded geographically, product range, went into servers and workstations and storage, and obviously the industry has continued to evolve.
I wanted to go back to that early moment because the thing that has amazed me as I've gotten to know you is that same passion that you had when you were 19 about hardware, and is the same passion that you have today when you talk about what's in that box over there. And how have you maintained that? How do you maintain that level of passion and enthusiasm around evolving our industry, over so many decades?
I think the impact that the industry has is far greater than it was before, so it's easy to get excited. And when I look at the kinds of systems that we create now, they're solving the biggest unsolved problems in the world, whether it's in healthcare or education or energy, or if you look at the big scientific problems that have not been solved, they're essentially problems that can be solved with more computing power. And so we don't necessarily have to go solve all those problems, but we can provide the tools that enable our customers to go do the things that they want to go do. And to me, that's tremendously exciting, and to be able to witness that firsthand and see it firsthand, and to see our customers succeed, as a result of that, to see our people succeed as a result of that, it's tremendously exciting and very rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, that enthusiasm that you have, and every time I talk to you, it's a consistent. It's just in part of your essence. It's just flowing out. But there's another part of it, which is you have a huge commitment to your customers. And like me, we joke about this, but you are on the road a lot, even now, and you love being with customers and meeting them and talking to them and finding out, what's going on with them. Where did that come from? Where did that passion, kind of that never-ending passion for customers, come from?
I just thought that's how you're supposed to do it. So, you got to go where the customers are, and you've got to, I think listening and learning, like we were talking about briefly in the earlier session, that's always been part of our culture. We also get tremendous insights. I remember in the late 80s when we were figuring out how to supply business critical IT to really huge companies around the world, the biggest companies in the world. Our best customers taught us what their requirements were. And when we could do it for one customer, we could then go do it for 10 more, and 100 more, and 1,000 more. And so those customers that were the toughest on us were actually the best customers, as they were teaching us. And of course, they took us all over the world, right? We would start off with them in 5 countries or 10 countries, and they'd say, no, you have to be on the west coast of Africa because that's where we are. And you have to be, over here in South America, and you need to be over here in Indonesia and Pakistan and, 180 countries. So we learn from those customers, and that's fantastic.
That's not completely, though, where it started. You really have this concept of being able to do it direct, the whole concept of selling on the phone. I remember a lot of the early ads that you had, the comparisons that you would make against Compaq or early competitors, and the whole concept of the direct connection. How did that evolve to the point where you're willing to go to the west coast of Africa and set up a shop?
Well, the company started with this business model of selling directly to customers. And most people think that means that we sold directly to consumers. And we did and we do, but actually most of our customers weren't consumers. They were businesses. And still today, 85% of our customers are businesses, institutions, government, and consumer is the smaller portion. Today, actually, we have also partners that we work with. We have 75,000 partners around the world that help us extend our reach. But the direct orientation was the origin of the company, and that gave us not only structural advantages with respect to our competitors at that time in the industry, although competitors have changed and evolved and morphed, and they're aren't as, they're different ones and different things are happening now. But that was a fantastic way for us to launch our business, and I would say almost any mistake we made was overcome because of this structural advantage that we had, and fortunately we didn't make the same mistakes over and over again. But that customer centricity is deeply embedded in our culture, and so when we speak,
it's deeply embedded in you. I mean, it's just what you love.
Yeah, it's fun. It's how we learn. We learn by listening, by being curious, by asking questions,
right.
And that's how you discover the opportunities.
Yeah, I know. Like when you're talking, you'll say, "Well, this is how we learn," but it's really, it really comes forth, just how you've driven that, just as your personal interest and driven in the company. I have a lot of respect for it, and it's amazing. When we started Salesforce, our company did not have Dell servers. We were running it all on Sun, and we had those E25Ks, and we had other Sun computers, and we've been able to move off of that and on all these, today Dell Power Edge. I'm not allowed to say PC server, but Dell servers.
It's not a PC server. It's a Power Edge server.
Right, Power Edge server, right. Which has a lot of the same components of computers that are like that one up there. Tell me, when you look at that kind of the PC, owning the data center today, did that happen as fast as you thought it was going to? Did you think it didn't happen as fast as you thought it was going to?
Well, I remember the meeting that we had when we decided to go in the server business. We were actually having a board meeting in Paris, and we explained to our board how it was some sort of the dawn of the client-server age, right? And Novell was sort of bubbling up, and Microsoft was figuring out how to make a server operating system, and microprocessors were improving, and RAID architectures were scaling down to small x86 servers. And we saw this happening and said, we really have to go after this. We can't just be a client company. We've got to be a server company as well. And we threw ourselves into that. We studied the market. We said, well, should we acquire one of these niche server companies? And we concluded that, no, we could do that ourselves. We got some talented guys who knew how to do that. And, it's grown to be a very significant part of our business. And now we've, to get in deeper into storage, we did a number of acquisitions, like EqualLogic almost 4 years ago, Compellent earlier this year, Force 10 in networking. And so now that whole data center business is a big part of our business and gives us a full range of solutions.
About a year ago, you and I got an iPad on about the same day, and we were kind of, we're both very into everything new, everything exciting, what everything is changing. Are you surprised to see it sell 40 million units this year?
It's obviously done really well. I think, what we see is, whenever you can create a compelling experience that isn't solved by something else, you can create a great big market. I think, again, you're going to see form factors and evolve. You got a lot of people aiming at that space. Apple's really done fabulously well. And, if you looked at the tablet space, you'd say, well, nobody else has really done all that well yet.
Well, it's a brand new space.
Not
it's
too unlike what you would have said about smartphones
it's just a year old,
few years ago, right?
Yeah.
And now you see Android's taking off in smartphones, and so
Right.
it's a very dynamically evolving space. Right. Microsoft had their Build conference yesterday. They showed off Windows 8, which is really oriented around touch interface and tablet. Another big thing, of course, is these low-power microprocessors, because you remember the whole gigahertz war, and people had more gigahertz, and machines.
I think they were invented right here in this country.
ARM, sure. ARM Holdings, nice British company. But the gigahertz war, sort of had a downside to it, which is these machines were using too much power. And of course, when you want to have a small portable device that's really light, that doesn't really go. So there's been a whole move by the industry to make these really, really power efficient, small, microprocessors for mobile devices. And so you're starting to see those pop up in big ways, and that will enable all sorts of new form factors to make them thinner, lighter, and more mobile.
Do you think Intel has moved fast enough in that space? Were they able to hold back ARM in their work?
In smartphones, they clearly haven't. Tablets is going to be the real battleground, and obviously they're going after smartphones as well. What I would tell you is that we can use any device. So we can use ARM, we can use Intel, we can use AMD. Somebody else comes up with something else interesting, great. And so there are lots of choices out there.
You've met a lot of amazing people in the industry, over several decades. You saw a lot of people doing, leading companies, amazing hardware companies, amazing software companies, service companies. Do you have a couple of executives that really influenced you, or that really stood out for you after you met them or maintained relationships with them?
Well, Mark, I put you in that category.
Okay, thank you. Other than me.
I think we have an amazing industry. We have an industry that changes so rapidly. There's always these inflection points and new things that are occurring. You look at the speed at which new companies are being created, and certainly Facebook, Zynga, Twitter as sort of the newer generations.
Is it inspiring for you to see Mark Zuckerberg come along kind of in a Michael Dell, I dropped out of college and I'm starting this company and here we go?
Absolutely, and to see how fast they can scale. We thought it was pretty cool to grow at the rates we're growing at, but these companies are growing far, far faster. And when our company went public, I think we raised like $30 million, and we had $150 million in revenue, and that wouldn't be a public offering today.
Right.
That would be kind of
that's your angel round.
That would be a little, a kind of a dinner, with some angel investors or something.
So Mark Zuckerberg's amazing. Have there been other executives that you've enjoyed getting to know and to?
I got to know and work pretty closely with Andy Grove, and he was certainly one of the great leaders and innovators in our industry. There are a lot to choose from. I think the industry has a lot of dynamic characters that have led a lot of rapid change. Whenever you have ingredients changing so quickly, in terms of lightweight programming languages, the processor technology, the networking technology, it's enabling new innovation as either companies or customers are able to combine these things together. It's a tremendously exciting industry.
Are you surprised to see IBM, which was the company that you originally were so enamored with, and making these PCs to kind of just become now like a services company and get out of, there's no, IBM, technology that's deep inside our data centers or desktops anymore?
If you think about it in the backdrop of the industry is $3 trillion in size, it's really hard for a company and impractical for a company to try to be all things to all people. IBM's done a very nice job in using its historical strengths and capabilities to evolve into what it is today, and hard to argue with that success. And I think we can all learn some lessons from their transformation. As we think about our evolution, we don't have a legacy, as they would have. So we get to understand all the things that are really changing for customers in cloud and mobility, and pivot to those things and create the solutions that are really going to be valuable. And you know, we love those kinds of solutions that are really valuable for customers, but hard for competitors to adopt because they wouldn't want to destroy their legacy. And you see that happening constantly in our industry. It's the curse of the incumbent, and
The innovator's dilemma.
Innovator's dilemma, and that is constantly repeating itself over and over again. And every company that is successful in one thing, or you know, has to kind of deal with that and challenge itself and say, are you going to go reinvent yourself, or are you going to let somebody else do it?
This is a tough growth time right now for kind of Western economies, especially, and you know, you've seen this broad-scale disintermediation between the political centers, especially in the United States, Washington, and the rest of the country. Are you surprised to see such a break-off between the leadership and and the people?
There's no way you can spend more money than you have for any length of time and have something good happen. And we sort of have a dramatic accumulation of that problem over a pretty extended period of time. And the political process is not very good at all in encouraging long-term thinking, because you know, it looks for solutions before the next election. And we've accumulated a series of problems that are really not solved in a short-term context. And so, you know, how does society and the political system evolve to go deal with those grand challenges and to spend within its means and to, you know, navigate those changes without, you know, even more challenges or civil unrest?
If you were to create a growth agenda for the United States, what are the 2 or 3 things that you would focus on to get the economy moving again?
I would spend a great deal of time on education, because we're not creating in the US or many developed countries the caliber and the quantity of highly skilled talent that we need. So, you know, if we need 100 people to put things in boxes and, you know, tape them up and send them out, we'll have 10,000 people lined up for those jobs. If we need 100 storage engineers or network engineers or software engineers, we have to go find them one at a time. It's really, really a challenge. I think...
Which is amazing, right? Because we have an unemployment problem in the United States, but...
We have an unemployment problem, but we really have...
companies like ours, we can't find enough people to hire.
We really have a skills gap problem. So we have, you know, the people that have the skills are not unemployed, and there's a large number of unemployed that don't have the skills that are needed. So that's a huge issue. I think, you know, all the growth in jobs comes from small companies that are growing fast. And we have kind of this creeping confidence problem where new businesses are not being created, risk isn't being taken on, and the nature of the political process is not really helping us in that direction. And so, you know, that's a real challenge. I also think we have to deal with the reality that the value proposition of North America and Western Europe has been fundamentally altered by the addition of all these new, very talented workers, you know, in the developed countries.
Right.
And the U.S. and perhaps the countries in Western Europe haven't had an industrial policy or the kind of long-range planning and thinking to interpret how their value proposition has to change given this tremendous onslaught of capability. I mean, no surprise to you that most countries in the world that we travel to, when you go and talk to the government, their pitch is something like this: please come to our country. We'll give you free land, free buildings, and you don't have to pay any taxes. Just hire our people. And, that's pretty compelling.
And are you not getting that pitch, while you're here in the UK or back in the United States?
Not quite. There's a pitch, but it's a different pitch.
Mm-hmm. And so, would you say that's the core of? When you started the company.
Well, it's competitiveness. There's
Yeah.
just the simple word competitiveness.
Right.
Has only recently begun to be
Is
uttered.
that the out of touchness of these governments? Is that the issue, that they're like, they themselves are not in touch with what they should be doing?
They have very difficult jobs, and
Sure.
I can't begin to...
But in terms of what they should be doing, in terms of getting the economies back and getting growth and getting people employed and getting people educated and saying we're going to have a manufacturing environment again, and we're going to have an energy economy, and we're going to have an education economy.
The only way you're really going to do that is to be competitive, right? There's no easy answer here in terms of, and you sort of think about it and you say, well, why do jobs exist? Jobs exist because you provide something of value. You have to provide something of value relative to other things of value all over the world, so you have to be competitive. And if you're not competitive, you just don't get very far. And so the game isn't about what goes on in a particular country, and now you see small companies that are able to globalize much, much faster. We sell to the biggest companies in the world, and we have these global account teams, and we serve these customers, but we've seen a real trend in the last 5 or 10 years where you have 100-person companies, 200-person companies, where they have an office, they're headquartered in the UK or Germany or France, and they have an office in China, or they have an office in Brazil, or an office in India. And they want to be treated like a global enterprise too, even though they are a company with 150 people.
Right. Yeah. So you look at that, and when you started that company, you're 19. The company is starting. You start building your factories. Where you were building them, when you were 20 and 25 years old, is not where you're building them today at 40, 46, and 47-year-old. Do you think when you're 57, it will shift back? Could you see, a change again? Do you think that manufacturing sector could shift?
We're building different kinds of factories. Next, in 2 or 3 weeks, we'll open a Silicon Valley Innovation Center where we're hiring lots of engineers to develop the next generation of our technology. If you think about the devices themselves, they're made close to the feedstock. The feedstock are the semiconductors and the displays and the disk drives. There are countries, back to competitiveness, who have an industrial policy that says we want those capital-intensive industries. It may not be labor-intensive. We want to track those industries, and that's where the capital goes. And without those feedstock industries, it's really hard to have the end products be built there.
So would you like to see the U.S. government take on more of that approach?
I think for some of the most advanced industries, that would be a very good thing to consider, particularly the ones that require the most advanced science and technology, because those are sources of great value. The reality is that the companies in the U.S. and other key developed countries still have a predominance of the technologies that are driving the world forward. When a nation goes to industrialize, it is, in effect, ringing the cash register of the great companies of the world. Now, the great companies of the world can go develop and create and build those products and solutions wherever the people exist. And your company, our company, we will go where the talent is. And I'm an American, I love America, but we've got to run our business, and you know, we've got to go where the talent is, and we've got to go where the customers are.
Sure.
I mean, it's also important to remember 96% of our potential customers don't live in our home market. And if we're going to sell in those countries, we have to be present in those countries. We have to be an economic participant in those countries. And, you know, the real, one real challenge here is that America has, let's say, almost 4% of the world's population. It has about half of the wealth in the world. So if you're talking about global trade, you'd kind of say, well, it's already won. But if you have policymakers who don't really understand how the global economy works and competitiveness, and you have all these new forces coming in, it's a potentially dangerous combination. So we have to spend more time talking about competitiveness and how our young people have the skills to be able to compete globally.
Is that because the U.S. and the U.K. have too much short-term thinking, and that you see these kind of other countries with better long-term plans?
I think that's a big factor. I mean, the political process does not encourage long-term thinking, you know, and you know, in fact, it's almost never on the ballot. So that's a problem. If you pivot over to Beijing, you know, they're working on the 13th five-year plan. And if you read those plans, you know, for particular industry segments, they're quite sophisticated. And, you know, meanwhile, back in Washington, lots of bickering, and, you know, they're not talking about the five-year plan, they're talking about the 5-minute plan, unfortunately.
Michael Dell, thanks so much for coming to Cloudforce London.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.